Welcome to the Big Kickoff football show on a weekend where managers are dropping like flies. Liverpool could need a new manager soon, and United definitely do. And I think we'll start off, Dave, with the managers dropping like flies. You couldn't keep up with it on Saturday night.
Yeah.
The fifth Premier League manager, and at this time last year there was only one manager sacked at this stage. It's a bit crazy, really.
Yeah, are they all kind of panicking because we've talked about it for the last couple of weeks that there isn't a depth of talent in management, and are one or two of them thinking, Christ, we're struggling. Do we get out there now and get somebody beforehand before somebody else does? I don't know. It's just started a bit of a ripple effect with obviously the obvious ones of Dean Smith yesterday with Aston Villa and the softly spoken German Daniel Farke of Norwich has finally met his maker. Both of them are not surprising. A little bit after Norwich win, but they must have had it in the locker. Win, lose or draw happened yesterday. They were obviously gonna get rid of him, and maybe here's a little shit store. Maybe with the fact that Neil Warnock has finished at Bury, you never know. Norwich might be trying to pull something out of the hat, or Villa, you never know. To get a quick 6-7 month fix. But yeah, I think it's just a bit of a ripple effect. Newcastle are obviously, Eddie Howe is doing the hokey cokey again, which is a bit weird. He is or he isn't, I don't know. This is the second time in a row. I'd be worried taking him on now at this stage. So the what would you call it? The revolving door is well and truly spinning at the moment. But there could be more. That's the weird thing, because they're all going to be panicking and thinking, is this the right time to pull the trigger? So yeah, plenty of speculation. And then of course what happened with United yesterday, you could easily have more. Who's to say? It's a crazy time, but sure, it's always the manager's fault, which is the easy thing to do with one or two of them. But sure, look, where do you start?
Neil, we'll talk about the Norwich because they must have made their decision obviously before the game. You don't sack someone after a game after winning. So this decision was obviously made well in advance of the win at the weekend, which got them off the bottom for a matter of hours. Dean Smith, 16th position. It's not really bad for Aston Villa, but then 5 results in a row where they've been beaten, that doesn't help. But do you think he should have had a little bit more time on his hands? He did give them an unbelievable season last year.
Yeah, I think it's all based on what your expectations are. You know, if you're Villa, what he did last year I thought was quite impressive. Not just kind of the results, but the way he had them playing. He had them playing for each other. When they lost Grealish for a couple of games in a row, it didn't really hamper them too much. They looked like a proper team. And then, what's 5 results in a row? It's not massive in the grand scheme of a 38 game season, but obviously the expectations up higher are that they're expecting them to be picking up more points, to be challenging maybe for Europe. They have 100 million investment gone in there. The Grealish money that was well spent. That looked like well spent money, which now maybe not so much. Obviously, a couple of players couldn't gel. Change of system, which we've discussed on the show a couple of times now, because they're having to try accommodate Danny Ings into the team, who just signed for decent money. So it just didn't really gel for them. But I would have thought he would have got to Christmas. Definitely a couple of games more. 11 games seems to be very, very little. But then again, 5 losses in a row, maybe they just felt the timing was right. But again, it all depends on who they bring in. Like, if they bring in the right guy, it's the right decision. If they bring in the wrong guy, or if they get caught in a kind of a merry-go-round where there's a couple of clubs looking, and the kind of farce that you've seen, a couple of, like Tottenham, where they ended up going for 6th choice manager nearly, it could blow up in their faces.
Yeah, Dave, you look at Burnley, there's no panicking there. There's not even a question of any sort of panicking going on there. So why are these other clubs jumping so early?
Yeah, like just as you were talking there, and I was trying to reassess it a little bit, and I think you said the P word there, panic. I think now with, you know, they'll be worried about the likes of Newcastle, who will have a new manager and have a war chest to really try and have a go at getting out of that relegation zone. You've Watford with Ranieri, who may pull it out of the bag. You've got Norwich now trying to have another go with a new manager and pull it out. So that's probably where Villa are thinking, "Shies, 5 in a row. We're being pulled into this. What do we do? Let's do the easy thing and bring in bring in a new manager, and hopefully that gives it a bit of an impetus." So it's definitely exactly what you said there. There's a bit of a panic, and there's, like, how precious this Premier League is for some of these clubs, and with the 3 or 4 changes being made there, and the likes of your Southamptons and Brentfords, they're being lured in a little bit at the moment. But you've got Leeds there as well. They're decent sides, which you'll expect them to turn little bits of form around from time to time. So there's a bit of instability down there, but one or two others are trying to stabilise. So hence, oh shit, we better do the same just to give ourselves any chance. And let's face it, we all know it. These guys don't truly know the game inside out, the owners. But it's like, shit, I better do what everyone else is doing, or else we'll be in trouble. And even though you look at Burnley, they may do it the right way by keeping it nice and steady and trusting their manager, trusting what they did, because they were excellent against Chelsea yesterday. And credit to them, and they hung on to dear life. But I'd say exactly what you said. There's a bit of panic, bit of sheep following each other, and we better not be dragged in there. So we better be doing what everyone else is doing,
Yeah, I can understand the Norwich one. I've been slagging them a little bit at the start of the season, so maybe this is them doing something to try and stop the inevitable, so that's fine. Aston Villa, I thought that he'd have a little bit more time.
Yeah.
Newcastle and Steve Bruce, that was always going to happen. That was going to happen from the day he took the job. He knew that, so that was the case there. Nuno Espirito Santo with Spurs, I think that's just because Conte, obviously, they went back to him and they got positive vibes and decided, right, we're looking at a greener field across the way here, and we're going to jump at it straight away. So I can understand that as well, because the results aren't going. They need someone to be able to drag them together, and obviously they didn't feel Nuno was doing the job. And then you've got Muniz for Watford, which was just really a joke. They're in 14th position at the time. I think that's the 13th manager over 8 years or whatever it is. So yeah, a bit of a crazy one. But so I can understand. But you could look at a few other teams, Dave, in this position. Mm-hmm. Leeds could have easily turned around with Bielsa and said, listen, we're not getting anywhere, we're not progressing, people have found us out. Leicester City at the moment are going through a run, Neil, that isn't the greatest, and there's rumours of Rodgers going probably for the United job. I doubt it on the form that's been shown at the moment. You look at Everton, Benitez under a little bit of pressure, and of course Wolves have changed their manager, and that looks a little bit fresher. So Neil, I'll ask you, should teams give their managers, and you look at Solskjaer now as well, should teams give their managers a little bit more time? Should they be looking at towards Christmas and they still have a half a year to change things around? Is now the time to change?
Do you know what it is? Again, I refer to kind of what your long-term plan is. Like, so when you bring a manager in, you're meant to bring him in, you're meant to back him, you're meant to give him some signings, you're meant to give him money, you're meant to give him support. He puts an infrastructure in place. So if you look at the Watford model, where they just keep flipping managers, like, what's their infrastructure in the club? What's the youth system set up? Like, are they trying to develop from within? So from that point of view, I would be very reluctant. If you're looking to bring in a manager, you need to get the right guy, and kind of, you're almost setting out a 3 to 5 year plan to try and achieve something. I don't think you should be tearing it up every 3 to 6 months, and especially every 5 games if things go bad. The Dean Smith and Aston Villa one reeks for me, because I don't, he's been there a while, he knows the club, he's done well. It's almost like it's changed overnight nearly. That seems too soon considering what they went through last season. But it also shows the inflated sense of these directors, these people that are running the clubs. Do they really know what they're on about? Like, they've got to bring in a better guy now with a better structure. They have to support him. They've just spent 100 million on a Dean Smith team, on Dean Smith replacements, on his style and what they want. Are they going to bring in, and I'll just, for devil's advocate, say a Lampard or a Gerrard were kind of linked with the job. Are you going to go then and buy Steven Gerrard type players, Lampard type players now? What are they going to do with the guys they've just purchased? Or is it going to be the kind of new age way of, You have a director of football, you're the manager, here's your team, go make it work. So for me, I think you should be giving them time. You want to see that the project comes to fruition. If that takes a season, so be it. Provided you're not getting relegated, they should be given more time to kind of to bear fruit.
Yeah. Okay. We talked about it just off air before we came on, Dave. Newcastle got a point away from home, which they were absolutely delighted with. Eddie Howe was in the crowd, and Johnny O'Byrne says, Eddie Howe, a massive gamble. The guy bought in Ibe and Solanke. I suppose it's easy to pick out a couple of players and say, yeah, listen, he's brought these players in, they're failures. I think you can go through every Premier League team and pick out players who were failures. So what does Eddie Howe bring to Newcastle, and is it enough to keep them up? I suppose he's got Bournemouth from the bottom league into the Premier League, kept them stable for a few years, and maybe a caught up in them.
Yeah, but I suppose Johnny has a small point in the sense that this is when Bournemouth started to have money because they were in the Premier League for a year or two, and when he had the money, that's what he bought. So I suppose, do you want to trust Newcastle? And they probably cost about 50 million. So if he brings in two players of that similar ilk for Newcastle, they're still going to get relegated. So he has a point to an extent. Anyhow, I'd be worried. Because he still hasn't signed. It's all this backroom staff stuff, bit similar to Celtic. What's the problem? If you're that passionate about football, get in there and get stuck in on the pitch, on the training pitch, and get out there. And especially at Newcastle, he should jump at that. Like, he's got a team, like a back in there. In theory, he won't be maybe because he knows he won't be the final piece. Like, he's going to be there to get the ball rolling. Maybe that doesn't interest him, but he's an idiot if he doesn't jump on it. Like, an absolute idiot if he doesn't jump on it, because this star is non-existent at the moment. So he has to jump in. So what he should do is get in there and make it almost impossible to get rid of him, and he wouldn't be the greatest defensive-minded thing going in relation to Bournemouth. They were very poor defensively, so I'd be a bit worried about that considering the players that they have. So they should be the first players he should buy, but he seems to buy a lot of midfielders and forwards, which I'd be worried about, because I'm not saying they're flush, but they've better forwards and midfielders than they do defenders. So has he got it in the locker to help whoever's in the background bring in some decent defenders to shore up? Because they've the worst defence. They've conceded 24. Second worst defence, but they're only 2 goals behind Norwich. So that's what he needs to do, and I'd be worried whether he can. But he still needs to take it for himself regardless. But other than that, I'm a bit unsure because of the carry-on that's going on again as usual. Because if this was the first time, I'd be still a bit worried. But the fact that he's done this with Celtic, I don't know what's going on with the man. How passionate or how much does he really want to get back into the game? I'd question.
Well, he was at the game the other night, Dave. So it's not an indication that he is taking it.
Well, then sign. Like, what's he waiting on? Like, what's the stipulations? Like, he's getting as bad as the players. Like, what's the clauses? I don't get it. Just sign already and get into it. But shore up the defense, get tight, be hard to beat, get a bit ugly, and get tough. And get on with it. Roll up the sleeves and get on with it, because at the moment, even they weren't pretty last night against Brighton either. But he'll obviously try and be a bit more patient, a bit more on the deck. Not that they haven't been, but that's the type of play he likes to play. He likes wingers. He likes pace. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on with Fraser, who gladly jumped the ship. How will their dynamic get on? Which would be interesting. I think he'll get on with Wilson, but it'll be interesting walking into the dressing room and saying to Fraser, "We meet again. Remember you." But with Newcastle, it'll be short. How short, I don't know. Will it be enough? Who's to say? But he definitely needs to start with the back line before touching midfield or forwards.
Okay, Neil, so I'm going to put that to you now. Over the years, and the statistics are there, Eddie Howe's teams concede an awful lot of goals, but they do score an awful lot of goals. So at the moment, the team are doing exactly what his teams probably did. So is it enough for Eddie Howe to go in there? He may not tighten up, but he may bring a lot more goals that may win games.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm very skeptical, a bit like Dave. I think it really depends on the January transfer window. I don't think Eddie Howe can get them out of trouble with the squad that they have. If anything, I think Steve Bruce tried to take the shackles off them a little bit this season by letting him be a little bit, I'll say less boring, but more attacking. He's released the shackles a little, but it's backfired. Their back line is really, really porous. And therein lies the problem. And that's why they're conceding all the goals. Like, you know, even if you look from an Irish point of view, Kieran Clark, you thought his days were numbered at Newcastle, yet he keeps popping in there. Lascelles, who you thought was going to kick on, hasn't really kicked on and become that type of defender I think people thought he was going to be. So that's their biggest problem. And to bring in Eddie Howe to me doesn't set up, you know, like a pragmatic, like, you know, even Moyes today, like, you know, that Mourinho-esque where you're trying to get a result and it's don't concede at all costs. Benitez did it with Newcastle and he was very pragmatic and they didn't concede, but they were just horrible to watch. So whereas I definitely think Eddie Howe will increase the kind of watchability of them, I'd be very skeptical that he can outscore and get them out of trouble unless he recruits well and brings in some new guys.
Okay. Dave, West Ham today jumped Liverpool to go into third place. A really, really good game. 3-2 in the end. Listening to them after the game and listening about the game plan that West Ham had, sounds just like Liverpool fell into the trap that was set for them. They were very predictable, Liverpool.
Yeah, like basically they got a goal at the start and happy days, and that really kind of set them up nicely. But they probably played a lot, especially in their own half, within the width of the box and packed that in, because you look at, say, City try and kill you with a 1,000 paper cuts. You know, they'll just keep pass, and you're just dead. While Liverpool just throw haymakers and they try to force far too much. You'd swear it was the last minute of the game, 15, 20 minutes in, the way they were trying to force balls that just weren't there. Instead of maybe being a bit more patient, said, right, let's tire them out. It's 15 minutes into the game. Let's just own the ball. And eventually they run ragged and eventually they'll make mistakes and Salah's and Mane's will start coming to the fore. But like, they just kept trying to force balls that weren't there, didn't really go wide. They actually did a bit City, if you notice, for about 15 minutes. Alexander-Arnold started playing into centre midfield. Every time they got the ball, he started going into the middle of the park to try and be the playmaker. And straight away I went, this is a disaster. You're like, what's going on? And watch it again. 1,000,000% that happened. I'm not trying to wind these up. He did it for about 15, 20 minutes and a half, where he started sitting into the middle when Liverpool started to own the ball before the free kick. And I was like, this is gonna get ridiculous. But they got the goal and you think, right, we'll settle into the second half. But of course, West Ham had a game plan. And listen, when you're playing the best boys, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to West Ham because they're kind of technically up there at the moment, you know, you have to take them out of their comfort zone. You take the only way you're going to do it is to punch them in the face when they're standing in front of you and don't just bend over. And West Ham were a joy to watch in that sense today. And Liverpool threw everyone and anyone at it in the last 15 minutes, but didn't look overly convincing. Same again. When Thiago came on, he was trying to force the ball into the packed area instead of going out wide and just go old school and pepper crosses. And eventually they will crumble. Like that's what, like, look back in the day with United, everything was nice and calm and relaxed and just keep doing what you're doing. They will break. While with Liverpool, no, we need to get back now or else. Liverpool like to be in control for the full 90 minutes, end the story. And when they're not in control, they kind of, not panic, but yeah, I suppose they do panic a bit, but they just force things instead of being a bit relaxed, because this is football. You go 1-0 down, but Liverpool just did not seem happy from the get-go. Alisson was distracted after that goal because all he was interested in was making sure he kept pushing Antonio. And of course, the third goal came from it again because he was too busy worrying about his little area. But just to completely digress, I was delighted with that first goal because keepers get far too much protection. And deep down, even though it was a Liverpool goal, I'm delighted it was given.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever not going to be given. No. It was just more having to go run the mill sort of VAR thing that everyone has to go through now when a goal is scored.
Yeah,
Neil, if you look at, so Dave's talking about what they should do when they're on the front foot, but realistically, you can't go and win games if you're conceding 3 goals. And Liverpool looked very, very open with the fullbacks very high and very little protection from the defensive midfield.
Yeah, so look, at the end of the day, Liverpool play a game of risk and reward, and the risk is they go man for man at the back. So there was times when it was a Fornals and Antonio were left 1v1 versus Matip and Van Dijk, and they're comfortable to do that. That's the way they press, they overload the midfield, and that's why you're hitting your 65-70% possession. The downside of it is, and West Ham will eventually get in there at some stage, is that they'll play a long ball or they'll get up the field, and Liverpool won't win the first kind of phase of possession back, and it allows West Ham to push on 20, 30 yards and launch a counter-attack. Now, I'll kind of say as well, look, I thought West Ham missed a trick here. This reminded me a little bit when Liverpool lost against Villa very badly there last season, 7-2, that Liverpool looked vulnerable, and I think you touched on it there. I thought every time West Ham got the ball at the halfway line and ran at them, there was a moment, I don't know if anyone else seen it, where Van Dijk, I think it was Antonio, broke through, and Van Dijk kind of didn't run across to him. I couldn't hear the commentary because I was in the pub, but he didn't move. He didn't go across. He allowed Trent to do this kind of 70-yard last-ditch sprint to stop Antonio running through. It was very un-Liverpool-like and very un-Van Dijk-like. But we said it last week. Go on, yeah.
No, and Arnold was dead after that for 5 minutes because I remember it.
Yeah.
He actually goes to, and then he was gone. He literally stood in the middle of the park and he couldn't move.
In all fairness, he was stood in the middle of the park an awful long time, because that must be the only time he burst back, because he's very, very slow and sluggish at getting back and helping out in the back two, which it was. Neil, just because it seems Dave cut across you, now I have a chance. It wasn't just off West Ham playing the ball forward. There was a lot of the time they were getting intercepted, and Mane got intercepted on a few occasions in the centre of midfield, and they broke from that, and they always seem to have 2v2, 3v3 in these situations. Again, what Dave was saying, trying to play through the middle instead of getting out wide and getting caught, and then they're so open that for me it seems that Liverpool defensively have gone backwards compared to the season that they won the league. And I don't think it's just on the players. I think it's the way they're allowed to play at the moment.
Yeah, there's a naivety about it when you look back, especially when you analyse that game today. Now, if you take the two set pieces out of it, the amount of problems that West Ham caused them by going forward with one long ball. Now, if West Ham catch you like that, Leicester will catch you like that. Wolves will catch you like that. There's a lot of teams that play to the same kind of formula. But as I said, I think West Ham missed a trick, because if they were a little bit braver today, I think they could have had 4 or 5 if they'd have really gone at Liverpool a bit better. Now, look, they sat to their game plan. They sat back 30 yards maybe. It was a very negative approach for me, but it's a David Moyes approach. There's a reason why Moyes hasn't beaten Liverpool since, 2010, because even though West Ham were free flowing, free scoring. There's another reason why. But with any club, with Everton, I used to always feel that when Liverpool were vulnerable, when Moyes was at Everton, I never felt that Moyes unleashed the shackles to let Everton, even at Goodison, I always felt he was a negative manager. And I think that shone through today. But it worked out today because they scored the 2 set pieces. Take the 2 set pieces away, I don't know. Liverpool, as Dave said, got ragged. They got a little bit desperate. These kind of crazy angles for crosses start going in. You knew they were at the wrong angle because they overflighted in 5 or 6 of them that just went over Mane's head and out wide, which tells you they're probably not getting enough of a foothold up the field into the last third to cross. They're just, floating it in kind of willy-nilly, which doesn't help. So, look, you get what you deserve in football. Just because you're 70% possession doesn't mean you're entitled to win the game. There's different ways of winning. And West Ham suckered them with the 2 set-piece goals. And I'll say one thing, by the way, I've said it before on the show. Kurt Zouma attacks a header. He attacks a header with serious, serious intent. I've said it loads of times. Brilliant, brilliant leap of the ball, even when he was at Chelsea. Really, really good. That's a guy that, if I was to say someone's going to score, it would have been Ogbonna and Kurt Zouma, because they go in with serious intent, and Van Dijk had no answer. Alisson had no answer to that today, which is disappointing for Liverpool.
Could Van Dijk have gone a bit Duffy-esque for the second goal as well, instead of the usual kind of alongside him, hoping somebody else comes? I was waiting for the slide, and
someone should have chopped him down.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, as I've said it last week, we're not watertight, far from it. Bit overexposed, but yeah, the too cool for school pisses me off sometimes. And Alisson probably could have and should have maybe got a better hand to it. But I think if Van Dijk had have done what 95% of centre halves would have done, I think he'd have blocked it. To be honest, I think he was close enough.
Noel talks about what you were talking about, Neil. Liverpool can't seem to deal with crosses, and Brentford done them the same way. Dave,
get in the queue
with that corner kick, but that third one that Zouma went up for, and as Neil's saying, is a great header of a ball.
Yeah.
Mane was marking him. So why is Mane marking Kurt Zuma and then getting free at the back post? It doesn't make sense. That's the first one you're going to answer. Hold on. Second one is from Vinny. And Vinny says, no plan B, losing, bringing on Minamino. Owners happy letting Klopp perform miracles. Chelsea and City have squads. Liverpool don't. Where is the investment? You've got two of them there, Dave. Go.
And for the header, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Alexander Arnold was about 5 yards behind him with his hands on his hips as well, doing absolutely not being bitchy here, but look at yesterday. Get in the queue. There is probably 20, apart, maybe not West Ham, but there's 19 teams who are shy nowadays with crosses. It's pathetic. If the ball's coming at them straight away, a centre half loves it all day long, loves getting up and winning a header. If it comes from the side, oh Jesus. Like, it's like they have no idea. It's like this weird thing. That's why Jota's got a few goals that he did last week, the week before. Like, he's a little short arse and he's winning headers. That says it all. Like, there's not enough good enough centre halves anymore. They're all like, there's a lot of bluffers out there. And look at the goal for Bernardo Silva yesterday was the epitome of it, because a lot of them were only saying Sean De Gea. It was Maguire. It was his head height, and he just let it run past. And that's the epitome there. That's an 80 million defender, and we have a 75 million defender. And God forbid any balls come in from the side, because they don't want to know and they don't want to cut them out. It's not new news to me. That's why crossing is a dying game, but needs to come back into it, because even keepers hate it. Look at Alisson today. Hated it. Didn't want to know. And then it was gone. His head was gone, and he was obsessed with pushing Antonio. So I'm not surprised. It's not new news. Watch games for the last couple of years. That's the way it is. Just keep putting them in them crosses. Defenders aren't good defenders nowadays in relation to that old school type of defending. And in relation to the plan B, yeah, 100%. I understand. I get it. But I'm not quite ready yet to shoot from the hip like everyone else. First defeat in 25. Calm down. I have a funny feeling they're planning something. I'm not saying they're going to reinvent the wheel. I'm sure they're watching it. I'm sure they're going to invest. They're a business now, COVID and all that. If you believe what they say, that's the whole reason why they're keeping it to their chest. They're building up the revenue streams. They're nearly on a par with United. I expect them to start spending the money, but they'll be very boring and sensible about it. That's my opinion on it at the moment. But I'm not overly bothered that they haven't. I'm annoyed that they haven't done anything, because we stood still a bit, but I just have a feeling they're working on something. They have a couple of irons in the fire, and the breaking news tomorrow, somebody signed pre-contract. I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised with Liverpool. But as I said, our revenue streams are on a par with United at this stage now. We're looking into it in the last few weeks. So they need to start opening the wallet again and blowing the dust off.
Neil, would you be happy with Liverpool's squad, what they've brought in? Minamino has been mentioned there. Is he someone who's added to the squad?
No. Minamino he's a cheap boy. What was he, 10 million? Something like that, 10, 12 million. I don't think he was ever going to solve any crisis. He's there as a bit part player. He obviously has no problem being on the bench. Same with Origi, although I think they genuinely tried to get rid of Origi in the summer and they couldn't. It would have been interesting had they got rid of Origi, what they would have brought in, because you would have had to replace him with like for like. There's a couple of young lads on the peripheral at the moment that don't seem to be quite ready yet. Maybe next year, a couple of very exciting youngsters coming through. Maybe one of them could be an answer. Harvey Elliott looks back in the gym now. I think he's closer to a return again. So that will add to your midfield. I think we're light in midfield, losing Wijnaldum. You're relying very heavily now all of a sudden on Henderson and Fabinho. Milner picked up a knock. Thiago, for me, still hasn't really lit on fire. Like, he got left out today when you would think he would have gone in ahead of Oxlade-Chamberlain. So another midfielder, or maybe with Harvey Elliott coming back, he might energise your midfield a little bit. But as we've said in the show before, Liverpool's biggest problem now is going to be January, that African nations, missing players. That's going to be a killer. And to drop points like that today, maybe it comes back to haunt them in the end. Just by the way, in relation to what Noel said there about the defensive thing, I hope we're not going to return. When Van Dijk came in, it was the end of that whole hide behind the couch at every corner and free kick. And he solved it for a year or two. I really hope we don't go back to that where we look vulnerable under every cross, because it was a bad time to be a supporter at that stage. So hopefully he sorts that out. But there's a lot of work there needed, judging by today.
Yeah. Okay. Manchester United and Manchester City played in the Manchester Derby yesterday, Dave. Manchester City aren't going to get an easier game probably all season because there was absolutely nothing from United, was there?
Yeah, like one or two of the superlatives at City after the game were annoying me, and it wasn't because, oh, what about us? It was kind of like everyone was going on waxing lyrical about how amazing they were. They didn't even get out of first gear, let alone second gear in the second half. Yet somehow they were absolutely outstanding. But they didn't have to be. And they weren't either, for a fact. But that's because they didn't have to be. But that second half is the icing on the cake. From Leicester to now, that was the icing on the cake watching United. I'll be honest, I'm not going to mention Ollie. I'm not going to talk about him. I'm bored of him. I am absolutely bored to death of him. Bored to death of his sound bites. I'm sick of it. Dead man walking, whether it be next week or next year, I have no interest in the man. It's about players now, because as far as I'm concerned, somebody else is going to have them at some point. And it's about being honest about who's good enough, because I keep hearing about these world-class players, and it's like, well, list them, because I don't think there's as many as a lot of people seem to think there is, because, there isn't. So there's a lot to be done there. But whoever comes in, apparently, it's going to be easy. It's going to be dead easy, because it's stacked. So I'd ask you, Roy, how is it stacked? And tell me who they are, because they're far from it. So whoever comes in, it's not going to be easy. But all the experts on the TV seem to think it will be.
Well, Dave, you obviously haven't read my article that I put out today, so I'm pretty disappointed in you. You
No,
must have had a life today.
No, I did. I read it, but it's kind of like I'm asking you on behalf of United fans, who are they? Because these experts seem to think it's stacked.
I firmly believe that there's no leadership there, as in the manager. There's no fear.
Yeah.
They're not afraid of the manager. If you're afraid of a manager, it means that that if you're not doing your job, you're going to be taken out of a team, you're going to be taken out of a squad, or you're going to be leaving in January or in the summer. Now, Manchester United have had poor performances. Has the team changed? No. The only time the team has changed is when there's been injuries. Fred might have an injury. McTominay might have
Pogba suspension.
Paul Pogba suspended. Shaw might be injured. Maguire might be injured. Straight away, they're back in. There is no fear. They do not fear their positions in the team. So Ronaldo knows he's going to start. I'm not going to have a go at Ronaldo, because Ronaldo does the job. That's it. He does the job. He's up there. He'll score your goals. It's up to you now to deal with something around that. What I will say, though, is, and I said it in the article, he is clueless about what he's trying to do. And what I mean is, I'm not saying that he's not a good manager, as in he doesn't understand the game. Of course, he understands the game, but he doesn't know what he wants to do. He doesn't have a plan, and he doesn't have a plan when things aren't going right. So he doesn't know his best team. He doesn't know if someone is going to be taken out of the team, who's going to be his next player to go into those positions. So you have Rashford, who's out. He's sticking Sancho there. He brought Sancho to play on the right side of midfield. He's sticking him out on the left-hand side. Continuously putting him out on the left-hand side. And he hasn't performed on the left-hand side. He hasn't had a chance to perform on the right-hand side. He has Pogba and Fernandes, who play in the same position. None of them are centre midfielders. They're attacking midfielders who play just behind the striker. And he's trying to put Pogba in centre midfield. You can't put square pegs in round holes. You have Maguire and Varane. Maguire has a shaky patch. That's fair enough. Wan-Bissaka is not playing good. Shaw is not playing good. So who comes in? Is Tellez coming in? No, because he's sitting on the bench, because Shaw, the media have told him that he's the best left full in England and maybe Europe. So there is no fear at all. He just keeps putting the same players into the same positions, and it's that sign of madness. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you keep getting the same results, you're nuts, and that's exactly what's happening here. So, Neil, do you see anything that can... I mean, is there something there that Solskjaer can build on? Is there something that he can change? Or is it just the fact that he's ran out of ideas and he's not the man for the job now?
I only think he was the man for the job initially, because they needed someone kind of to come in, steady the ship, safe pair of hands. You know what I mean? That's all they needed initially off Solskjaer, was to get them through that first 3 to 6 months. Keane would be absolutely brilliant, judging by his Showtime
It'd be so
bonanza
proper.
yesterday. He was
Here's
brilliant.
something now, just because James, after saying that now, I was watching the match with my dad the other day, and he said, wouldn't it be interesting? Because when you look at the bench, Solskjaer used to talk to Mike Phelan. Mike Phelan used to be in his ears. He used to be now all this year seems to be Carrick. Phelan seems to be dropped out of the side. You don't see him there anymore. And I'm just wondering, has it gone from there's more information being given to you by an experienced coach, manager, assistant, whatever, and now Carrick and him have kind of gone. You never see Phelan in there anymore. And what we were saying, and my dad was saying, wouldn't it be very interesting to see if Keane was in there beside him as a number 2? Would things change? Would the mentality change? Would he be asking for more? Because that's more suits his level than the lower teams that he's at, because he can demand a higher level of these players.
If they listen to the criticism that he gives them, I don't think he's the right man to go in there and sit in the dressing room.
The training room, the dressing room's on fire, and he just comes in with a tin of petrol. That's exactly what it'd be like if he came in. I'll make it worse.
Paul Scholes, the same thing. Series. Paul Scholes destroys them as well. You couldn't bring them in. I'd love to see it fly in the wall, but Keane is best placed in the punditry room upstairs in Sky Sports, because the sound bites are getting better and better by the week.
Why would you play Fred?
Why would you play Fred? Yeah, it was comedy gold. But look, we laugh because he also has a point. You're after hitting it there, right? There's a certain madness to Solskjaer at the minute that, look, I just think he's ran his course. I think he's had his 3 years. He had a kind of an up and a down. He had quite a few highs. Like he's almost got there to winning a trophy on a couple of occasions, but he just shows his naivety and maybe his lack of experience. It's just interesting you say that, Roy, about his number 2. It was mentioned by either Neville or Keane. Have they lost faith in the backroom staff? They're not just saying Ollie anymore. They're saying Ollie and the backroom staff. So maybe that could be something else, that people don't have the faith. Like if you're Ronaldo and you walk in there, and no offense to Michael Carrick or whoever the hell it would be, and you're listening to this guy and you think he's bluffing, you've lost him, gone. And he will infect 2 or 3 more guys, because Ronaldo's Ronaldo. So I don't know. My biggest indication is, right, is that they bought a guy in Sancho in the summer, a guy that they've chased for 2 years. They paid top dollar for him, and they can't get a tune out of him. And to me, that's unforgivable. Could you imagine a 60, 70 million player sitting on the bench of any other club and not even getting a half a tune out of him? Don't mind anything else. That's unforgivable in my book.
Yeah. Does Ollie make players better? It doesn't seem so, Dave. As you said about Sancho there, that's 60, 70 million. You've got Van de Beek, who's another 40. So there's your 100 million. You could go on now, whoever else is on the bench. But just on when Van de Beek came onto the team, onto the pitch at the weekend, when he warmed up, the crowd erupted. And when he came on, the crowd were even more so, standing up, nearly a standing ovation for him coming on. What does that say?
It speaks everything. Like it's like Fred went to give a 5-yard pass just in front of the box, and it went about 20 feet up in the air. And I'm scratching my head going, what's the story with this fella? This is a simple pass, and we slag Wan-Bissaka for doing it. But here's Fred, who's supposed to be in the middle of midfield general. But that says everything, that these fans can be passionate and be over the top and be just one track minded when it comes to their own club. But, it's 75,000. So there's probably about half of the minimum are very sensible. So when you've got half the crowd or 40 or 50,000 roaring and cheering because a midfielder's coming on, because that's an indicator that what's in there is not good enough. But to be honest, what was sad about it was a 2-man midfield again, even though it was 2 wing backs in there to help them out a bit. City, the way they played, turned them into a back 5, and it was a 5-2-3 again, and they were expecting to win. It was just bonkers. And Boye got scapegoated as usual, because you can't piss off Maguire or Lindelof, even though Maguire has been the worst centre-half for the last month. But he just covers them up and sends on more players to cover up their mess in front of the defence instead of, as I said, I don't want to talk about the man. I really don't. I just bored of it. There's no hope for me, and I will gladly eat humble pie in a couple of years' time. But sure, Van Gaal was useless. He won a trophy. Mourinho was useless. He won 2 trophies. and they weren't backed. That's the irony of it all. And then you have Moyes doing what he's doing at West Ham, but they're sticking with this fella. Bonkers.
Yeah. Okay, Jimmy says they're saying Solskjaer, ask Ronnie, what will I do during the game? That says it all. I think basically now, I'm looking at any of the Manchester United fan forums and people talking on the telly, and even yous talking as not fans of Manchester United. I think the planet has given up on Solskjaer now. I don't think it's just there's not an Ollie in, Ollie out campaign anymore. I think it's just come on now, Ollie.
Call time of death.
Call time of day. Yeah, people are looking out for him now and saying, okay, you had your shot. Come on, get off the horse and let someone else have a shot. So troubling times, and there's nothing really to say about Manchester City, Dave. I'll finish with you because it was easy pickings.
Yeah, people might try and clutch straws. Oh, missing get a lot of chances, and then he missed them. Oh, yeah, who cares? In this game, who cares? It was like if they had to go up in a gear or two, they probably would have got a few more. I'd say, and as I said, that second half, there was not. The only thing I'll slag is just Phil Foden saying they had the game of their lives. Like, Jesus Christ! As soon as he said it, I'd say, "Oh, I'm gonna regret that." I'd say they hopped on him because
the face on Pep.
What?
Yeah, Pep was good.
He said what?
Yeah,
I hope we're going to have a few more. So as soon as he said it, I giggled. But
he actually says, "Oh well, he's young. He'll have many more."
Yeah, you might as well just retire now if that's it. But look, City protected the ball. They, as I said, they killed them with 1,000 paper cuts. They just jabbed away like once that first spear goes into the ball, and then it was second and third and fourth, and they just bled them out without doing anything overly fantastic. So. Job well done, move on. City won't look back on that game. They'll just, whatever. That's how bad it was. The fact that it was United would be nice and they'll high-five each other, but they'll just get on with life and move on and look well past that game.
Yeah, he said if he loves United like he says he does, he should walk.
I said that 2 weeks ago.
I half agree with you, Jim, as long as they're going to pay you. But if they're not going to pay you, get that money in the bank. Why not? Okay, well, United are oh no, here's Noel has one in here. I say he's been writing this since we started, so we better get this one in. United have two good ball headers in Ronaldo and Cavani and fast swingers in Sancho and Greenwood. Why don't they use them? Get crosses in instead of trying to walk it in like Arsenal used to.
Crosses, seriously, they're the future.
They're the future. They are, yeah.
And when you have Ronaldo and Cavani there, it's nuts. They've stopped crossing since Ronaldo's there. They're trying to get Fernandes to do these intricate balls where he got the lovely volley, but it's unreal. It's unreal. Look at him yesterday once or twice. Some of the
there's a good stat from the weekend that said that City have increased the amount of crosses by 70% from last season.
Ooh.
And the amount of times Jesus comes in from the wing and gets on the end of something. Bernardo got on the end of one the weekend.
Now, are they on the ground crosses as well, Neil?
Well, they're whipping it in behind. Yeah. I think it's kind of between centre half and fullback. It's not ones that are hanging high for the likes of, say, Ronaldo to come and leap. Same with Jota. Jota gets some very low kind of edge crosses, but the quality of the ball is the key.
Yeah. So we all agree with Noel. He'd be delighted with that one. Okay. Well, United are sleeping. Of course, the Gunners in London are starting to pick up pace, and it's unbelievable. And they are now 3 points ahead of Manchester United, which you wouldn't have thought. And Neil, Arteta he's made them solid, but there is something about them. There's a purpose about their football now.
Yeah, listen, they've got a bit of a swagger back, don't they? Like we were saying, 2 weeks ago, that they've stumbled almost across this success of the two centre-backs who were their best two centre-backs. They brought in the full-backs who were doing brilliant, the two sitting midfielders who were doing the job. And all of a sudden, Aubameyang has stopped hanging out in South Bay's restaurant, and instead now he's scoring goals again. They're revitalised. Maybe it was the steak. Maybe it was the quality of that steak he ate. Just woke Aubameyang up and now he's decided I'm a striker again. But they're really playing with a freedom. They're playing with excitement. They're playing Smith Rowe. They've got Saka. They've got a kind of a blend in the team at the minute that he just has right. Even the goal there today was Ben White carried the ball in and took the shot, and then Smith Rowe kind of finished it off. They've been ruthless in front of goal. They've been a joy to watch. It's an amazing transformation when literally he was on his knees. He was out. He was gone. You would have bet your worth that Arteta was going to go pre that transfer or the international break there a couple of weeks ago. And look, he's after turning it around and fair play to him. But it remains to be seen, can they hold in there? But you put them up there now. Them and West Ham are probably the two most informed sides that wouldn't be a regular top four team. But it's exciting for Arsenal supporters. And look, it's good to see them back firing. And for me, kind of personally, you look like a guy like Arteta who went in there with an idea. It's almost refreshing when you look at all the managers that lost their job in the last few weeks that he hung in there, and now all of a sudden his stock has rose again.
Yeah, no, it's good to see. I'm not going to waste too much time on Arsenal because they've done well so far, but I want to talk about Spurs, who are just interesting. Arsenal are turning back into 1-0 board in Arsenal, which is great to see for an Arsenal fan. But when you look at Spurs, Dave, they drew 0-0 with Everton today. You could neither say it's a good result or a bad result. It's not a defeat, but it's Everton. Everton are probably delighted with their point. He played a 3-4-3, if you want to call it that, or a 3-4-2-1, whatever you want to call it. How does that suit? He's going to have to. He still had Dyer in centre back. Is he going to? The only way this team is going to really change is that with the January transfer window.
Yeah, like there's no two ways about it. There's rumours that he has like 5 or 6 Serie A players he wants to bring in, which means it's only probably 1 or 2. Yeah, he's very much tightening up, making them hard to concede because they had no shots on target today. I think they had 2 shots overall. If I jump into it double quick again because I had it there. Yeah, just 8 shots, but none on target. Only 2 corners. They had 55% possession, which is decent enough. But I'd say it was very much low in the centre of the goal, and then obviously have Reguilon and Emerson kind of probably not as probing forward as much. Obviously, Højbjerg and Skip coming in is no surprise. So you have the 2 sitters there to protect that back 3, and then leave it to the legs of Son and Lucas to support Kane. It won't be pretty for Spurs fans to probably watch, but it's probably what they need to do just to get a bit of momentum and not lose a couple of games in a row and just build it up slowly. And it's not rocket science. They won the first 3 and then they just went down. Look at Arsenal lost the first 3 and you're like, they're screwed. And then they just slowly just pull it back up. And that's what Conte's going to do in the short term till new players come in. So they probably won't be somebody I'll be rushing to watch if they're the main match live, because I'd say they'll be very tight, very Italian-esque. With the 3 lads a bit isolated, I can imagine, trying to do all the work on the counter for now. And then let's see what kind of maybe defensive signings he'll probably bring in first, I'd imagine. If he's looked at previous videos, I'd say he'll gladly bring in a couple of centre-halves. I'd say that's a given. But with Spurs, definitely won't be pleasing on the eye. But he'll just make them incredibly rugged and hard to beat. Obviously, it was a bit of a mad game on Tuesday night with sending-offs galore, and they were down to 10 men. So just write that one off. But today, the fact that it was away from home, up at Merseyside, without a doubt, without seeing the game yet, because obviously the game was at 2 with the other one that was on, I'd say they were very dogged, very hard to beat, didn't give Everton all that much. And a good team to come up against at the moment with Everton, obviously the fact that they're not full strength themselves and are lacking goals. So it was probably a great fit as well with what he played it. But that draw could be just enough to just give him a little bit extra and just steady the ship a little bit before he starts freshening up that side.
Yeah, Neil, I heard Conte saying that he's going to try and keep Harry Kane as close to that, up to close to the 18-yard box as much as possible and not let him drift back. Is the key now just counter-attacking football, keep those 3 and let them attack with pace and Harry Kane staying up there and not drifting too much?
Yeah, there's a great contrast here with Mourinho and Conte coming in here, because Mourinho, Dave's just saying there that Conte will want to bring in some centre halves, whereas Mourinho really struggled to sort out their defence, and he was there for long enough to kind of get that job done. So even if you look at their bench, they got Sanchez and what's his name? Tanganga, that's him. Yeah, so they don't have great options there. So Mourinho tried them. He tried them in different ways, different methods. He switched them out a fullback, centre back. So it'll be interesting how Conte can solve that. And then the second conundrum is the Kane conundrum. This thing of Harry Kane getting older and losing his legs. He's not that bloody old. He's about to be sold for 150 million in the summer, and they're talking about him out doing this old-fashioned 10 instead of being a 9. I don't get that at all. I mean, you want Harry Kane to score goals. There's no way Pep was going to play him and then put him in as beside De Bruyne. He was going to be up top by himself. So it'd be interesting if Conte can kind of, can get him back to what he was. But you have to start with Harry Kane 20, 30 yards higher, not chasing back his own goals so much, but in the danger area, as Shearer used to say, between the width of the 18-yard box on the end of something. So maybe that will be his formula. But definitely there's a really good contrast to watch over the next few weeks of what way Conte gets the best out of him. And in fairness, don't forget this week they had a midweek match in Europe, and he probably had no time with them whatsoever between today's game. So he might get a bit of time. You might get a better idea of his ideas over the next couple of games.
Yeah, no, it'll be very interesting to see how Spurs develop. And after that January transfer window, you'll kind of maybe see a few extra players coming in, and at long last for Spurs fans, a few players starting to be pushed out of the team because they're there enough a long time. And if I'm talking about Manchester United players not getting swapped out, there's not too many out of that Spurs team getting swapped out either. Dave, Leeds and Leicester dropping points left, right, and centre. Really, they got an easy win against a poor Manchester United side, but then after that, they've been kind of a bit ropey, and this European campaign is kind of hindering them a little bit.
Yeah, like this is what you have to do in order to compete with the big boys. Like you look at West Ham, seem to be doing a good balancing act of it. Now maybe because they have a bit more in their squad, but look at who they came up against today, and they didn't fluke it. So with Leicester. But I think with Leicester, and there's a few little home truths that need to come to fruition. Like Vardy is 35 in January, and he isn't Vardy of old. He isn't the Vardy of old. I've seen him with one or two foot races, where he's not getting away from them the way he used to. He's a finisher still. There's no denying that. So they can't use that tactic of luring the team in and popping over the top. And that's what Dak has been probably brought in for, to take over from that eventually, because Vardy's got some good goals this year, but they're striker goals. They're not kind of that. A lot of them are not as old school over the top, kind of using his blister and pace. Listen, Maddison's too inconsistent. They've one or two players who maybe are a bit of inconsistency, and unfortunately they tend to come from home. And Barnes is one of them as well. I think they're very hot and cold, while Tielemans very much rolls up his sleeves and doesn't let you down. And I think that's the problem now with Leicester, is to try and get the majority of the 11 kind of showing up every week. There's a few too many inconsistencies with a couple of the players that I mentioned. But this is what you want as a player, is to be playing week in, week out in the likes of Europe and in the league. And this is where Rodgers and the players need to buck up and earn their few quid, because it's a decent side and it's a very solid, well-balanced side. But if you look at it today, there's a few more changes with Ademola Lookman, who hasn't really played all that much either. And like I said, Barnes was in the side today, but as I said, a bit like Maddison, they definitely blow a bit hot and cold. But with Leicester, maybe the bubble's burst a little bit with them. They've kind of reached their peak, and now they need to freshen up with the next similar player, but who's on the rise instead of on the decline. I'm not saying too many of them are on the decline, but, is it a bit of a hangover after hitting the heights of last year? Because winning a trophy is all well and good, but I don't know who I was listening to. Oh yeah, Ben Foster's podcast the other day when they won a League Cup. He said there was no real great celebrations on the train. It was like, yeah, we're training tomorrow and we've got another job to do. Because once you win, that's great, but let's go again. And with these middle tier teams, they win and that's it, and everything's great. And isn't that wonderful? But it's like, do you want to do it again? And maybe that's the element. Look at Leicester, how drastically they fell after winning the league. Is there a bit of a hangover after the cup? Let's enjoy that and soak that in a little bit. And, look how hard you have to work to get there. Well, you have to go and do it again now just to try and remotely stay in Europe again or try and win trophies. And that's something that's lacking in a lot of teams nowadays, including the big boys. Like you look at Liverpool, will they ever hit the heights again of winning the league? And there'll be question marks on one or two of them with what they said last week after the Brighton game and with their body language. Like, are you willing to roll up your sleeves and get to the top of the mountain again? And with Leicester at a lower level, I think that's a bit of it with them. There's a bit of we did our job last year, and they've maybe rested on their laurels a little bit.
Neil, when you look at Leicester, they've won the FA Cup last year. Of course, they won the league a few years ago, but when they won the FA Cup last year, they didn't really bring anyone in who was better than the players that they had. So is that a failure on behalf of Brendan Rodgers and his team?
Yeah, look, I think we've mentioned it before. I think the recruitment of Leicester, they seem to pull these 20, 25 million players out, maybe the French league, but kind of out of nowhere, a moneyball scenario, and they seem to hit the ground running and do well. I think as Dave has said there, they've added in a couple of premier players. What's it, Vesterveld, and just a couple of guys that you look at them and go, yeah, what are Vestergaard? Yeah, what are they doing there? They weren't going to improve your Johnny Evanses, your Soyunchus, you know what I mean? So I think they've maybe missed a trick in that regard where they tried to strengthen. And maybe looked, there was no one else available and they the option and they felt it was the right money. But they do need to get the recruitment right. That's what they're built on. That's what they've kind of their last 3 years of success. And I would call their last 3 years very, very successful because they've come the nearest. Whatever, like West Ham this year might be the Leicester of last 2 years where they get so near to that top four and fall at the last hurdle. But I think what Brendan Rodgers done in the last few years has been very, very impressive as a 3 year plan to, fifth place for 2 years and then an FA Cup. For anyone else, that's a successful campaign. But maybe for Leicester, they need to reevaluate where they want to go for the next 3 years. And I think Dave's dead right. They need to invest now before they get themselves into trouble.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thanks for everyone who sent in comments and everyone who watched tonight. Thank you very much, Dave and Neil. Thanks very much. It's an international week this week, so we will have stuff up on the bigkickoff.com, the Big Kickoff Facebook pages and social media pages throughout Twitter and Instagram and what have you. So keep an eye out for that.
Imagine Duffy cleans out Ronaldo.
Imagine Duffy.
Here's Jim.
Hold on, I better get this one in. In relation to Cresswell challenge today, how can you make a tackle without force and not hurt yourself? Football has gone too soft.
The last five words there. End of story. Finish on that.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? Like, I mean, again, they're looking at everything. How can you make a tackle? I've said this a million times. It really doesn't annoy me. People are talking about the follow through, but sure, that's how you make a tackle is by going into someone. You don't stop, and so yes, 100%, and maybe we'll bring that up further. We might have to do a rules and regulations program because there's too many of these that are starting to piss us off, and we need to send it in the future. So yes, you're right, Noel. Again, okay, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks very much. Oh, and